Hey friends, Al Iverson here, and it's time for another of your email authentication and deliverability questions answered. Today, I'm talking about something that's very important for email senders. That is Google ramping up enforcement of its email sender requirements. Now, if you've been following along, you already know that the largest mailbox providers have been steadily raising the bar for email senders. Authentication, alignment, permission, and reputation requirements have all gone from recommended best practices to published mandated rules that must be followed if you want your email messages to get accepted and delivered. This all started back in October 2023 when Yahoo and Google announced updated sender requirements, and then with Microsoft's announcement of very similar requirements in April 2025. We've been on a steady march toward nearly sender policy parity, with provider after provider mandating email authentication, permission best practices, and more. And in this next step, Google's warning that they're beginning to ratchet up their enforcement efforts. Google recently updated its bulk sender guidelines FAQ, and here's the key line. Quote, starting November 2025, Gmail is ramping up its enforcement on non-compliant traffic. Messages that fail to meet the email sender requirements will experience disruptions, including temporary and permanent rejections. End quote. So the rules themselves haven't changed. What is changing here is how strictly they will be enforced. If your email doesn't meet Google's sender requirements, you're now going to have a greater chance of being on the receiving end of negative feedback, meaning that you are now more likely to see deferred or rejected mail. Their initial compliance efforts were perhaps a bit light touch. I suspect they were initially looking at percentages of mail, prioritizing which senders to look at first. After all, Google manages a large Gmail universe, and it likely was not easy or wise for them to suddenly start rejecting non-compliant email messages across the board. Maybe those prior efforts were a bit of a shakedown cruise. I can't tell for sure, but regardless, the warning is there and it is clear. You're much more likely to see non-compliant email messages rejected by Google starting from now versus days past. Here's what Gmail expects to see from email senders. Fully authenticated email, passing SPF, DKIM, and DMARC checks. Proper alignment of one or more of those authentication indicators. Sending IPs and host names that resolve properly with working reverse DNS and valid hello or eHello configurations. Encrypted connections, meaning TLS, transport layer security. Clear, easy unsubscribe links, including one-click list unsubscribe. No deceptive friendly from names or subject lines. A spam complaint rate below 0.1%. Remember that these aren't new requirements. They've been clearly and fully spelled out on Google's email sender guidelines page since late 2023. This all applies to bulk email senders, meaning anyone sending 5,000 or more messages to Gmail in a single 24-hour period. That includes marketers, CRM platforms, SaaS applications, newsletters, really just anybody sending significant amounts of mail. And I recommend that you do this even if you send fewer than 5,000 messages per day. Thinking ahead, it stands to reason that mailbox providers are very likely to apply these requirements to all mail at some point, not just bulk mail. And so if you want a future-proof configuration, get into full compliance mode today. And here's the kicker. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Microsoft started enforcing its own bulk sender requirements earlier this year. They moved fast, announcing those requirements in April and moving straight to enforcement in May. And now Google, with their own updated enforcement efforts, is bringing us even closer to an industry-wide standard. Other hosters of the inboxes, like Yahoo Mail and Apple's iCloud, are already rejecting lots of non-compliant email messages, and the number of providers moving in this direction continues to grow. I think La Poste in France is the most recent one to have announced similar requirements very recently. What this means is the rules are becoming consistent across the board, and that's good news for legitimate senders. Bad actors and sloppy senders are going to get filtered out, while authenticated, Compliant good senders will see better inbox placement. So, what can you do today to stay ahead of this? First, check your domain configuration. Make sure SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are all in place, passing, and aligned. The Valamail Domain Checker is a great place to start. It'll help you confirm your authentication setup and policy strength. Next, review your unsubscribe mechanism. Make sure it's easy to use and that you're honoring opt outs quickly and properly. And finally, watch your spam complaint rate. Now, over time, you'll want to start checking your mail logs for SMTP deferrals and rejections specific to authentication, suspicions of spam, and RFC compliance issues. And if you're struggling to get at that data via mail server logs, Google recently did something very cool. They've added compliance related SMTP rejection details to DMARC aggregate reporting. It's right there in the XML data provided by Google, and we've even incorporated it into our reporting here in the Valamail platform. This can help you identify compliance issues with a broader organization-wide view, moving beyond the need to pull the needle out of the haystack by way of mail server logs and SMTP rejections. At the end of the day, this is all about protecting the email ecosystem. By requiring authentication and enforcing compliance, Google's helping make it easier to separate good senders from bad ones, keeping legitimate email in the inbox and keeping spam and phishing attempts out. If you're doing the right things, authenticating, aligning, respecting user preferences, you'll likely benefit from these changes as we move into a world where no auth means no entry. If you want to be part of the email conversation, you've got to play by the rules. And finally, there's links to the different mailbox provider sender requirement pages. The Gmail FAQ, where the latest notification was just posted, is the second one there in bold. And that's everything I've got for you today. Thanks so much for watching. And if you've got questions about these new enforcement steps or about sender requirements or DMARC and domain protection, drop me an email or head over to our website at valamail.com when you're ready to embark upon your DMARC journey.